How are you, Brent?
I am great, Rich. How are you guys doing? Good to be talking to you again, my
it
friend.
is great to be talking to you too. What's it like for you to be calling games on the radio for the Raiders in 2018?
It's been a
Brent?
great experience, Rich. I've enjoyed it more than I even expected to. Obviously, I'm blessed with the veteran Lincoln Kennedy, who was
Yes.
a offensive lineman and a Pro Bowler with the Raiders after he was drafted in the first round by Atlanta. I covered him when he played for the Washington Huskies, and it's been great to be around someone who, when we started the season, was so much more familiar with the Raider personnel. Certain things I had forgotten about the league is the turnover in manpower. Back in the preseason doing those games, I laughed and told people, listen, they say that some of these players don't need preseason, but I certainly did. And I'll tell you, the game, the field is even smaller. And what I mean by that is that the athletes today, you gave a rundown there of the NFL today. The athletes today are bigger and faster. The windows are narrower for the quarterbacks. It's much tougher physically, just as the NBA, just as Major League Baseball. Humans have advanced. But I must say, and being around John Gruden, he's a good friend of mine, and wish the coach well. He's been terrific as an offensive coordinator. Everybody knows they've had some defensive deficiencies that they're going to try to get over, and it was too bad that they had to let Khalil Mack go. It's simply a matter of economics with the Raiders, and everybody in the organization told me that he was a terrific youngster. I didn't get the chance to cover him one-on-one because I was never around the Buffalo college games, and everybody in the organization wishes him well. He's off to a terrific start with the Chicago Bears. But to get back to your question, I have enjoyed every snap. I have to tell you, it's energized an old man, if you know what I mean.
No, Brent, it's just like I said, it's where you should be if that's where you want to be. And I did about 7 years of NFL Total Access next to Lincoln Kennedy. He's just a great human, and a perfect partner. And I'm thrilled to hear that you're enjoying it more than you thought. Now, as for Khalil Mack, the general sense is that there's got to be some guys in that locker room, certainly after an 0-2 start, certainly after hearing Gruden over and over say we got to figure out where a pass rush is, that the guys in the locker room are upset or can't get over the fact that Mack had to go, as you put it. What can you tell us about the truth or non-truth of that belief?
Well, I'm sure that some of the players are puzzled whenever John says that we've got to have more of a pass rush. But it's a profession, and these guys have got their own jobs to worry about. I don't see any disruption because of it. I think that everybody, although disappointed that Khalil's not going to be there with them anymore, I think the athletes, from my observation, have moved forward. Now, after you lose a tough game, like they did in Denver, and they're off with their private groups or with their families or their friends. Now, obviously they're going to raise the issue. We probably could have won the game. They weren't going to beat the Rams, even if Khalil Mack was there. The Rams are definitely one of the teams that, if they stay healthy, could make it to the Super Bowl. But these guys are professionals. The media lingers on the story because that's what we do, and that's part of our job. That creates interest. One of the things that I like about it a lot, Rich, is that we have quit talking about politics around the NFL, and now we are talking about why did they get rid of this player and who do you play next and things like that. These are good football controversies. This is where the league belongs, and I applaud them for that. I think they're off to a terrific start this year. I think things like Fitzmagic in Tampa Bay, you can't create a better story than having this youngster who's out of Harvard, been around the league a long time. When I looked at his stats yesterday and saw that he had completed more than 78% of his passes and was averaging 13.43 yards an attempt, I said, you got to be kidding me. This is indeed magic. So listen, athletes move on. This is a job. This is a profession. This is how they make a living for themselves and their family. They don't sit around and talk about these things as much as we do.
No, I hear you. So, and then I'm loath to ask a question, but I will anyway. Mark Garagos, the attorney for Colin Kaepernick, was saying on TMZ, I can't believe I'm saying these words, but it's true, that it's possible that Kaepernick gets signed in the next week. And he said, I'll say this, if Al Davis was still alive, and then left his comment to be gleaned that it's maybe the Raiders could be interested in him. Have you heard anything on that front at all?
I have heard absolutely nothing, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think a couple of things are encouraging in that regard, and that's the fact that the Nike stock hit an all-time high after the somewhat controversial ad. Listen, I thought Kaepernick did good voiceover. I thought it was, I was fascinated to watch it, to tell you the truth.
Me too. I agree with you. But it's in a way, though, is that. And I said also at the top that Gruden's he's notoriously unhappy with his quarterback room, it seems. Year in and year out. I mean, as we know, he swapped out everybody that was underneath Derek Carr under the depth chart at the eve of the season. And it's just interesting seeing John back in the mix, and that might be something that he's trying to tinker with and seeing if Kaepernick might be a fit there. Don't know.
Yeah, we will see what John thinks going forward. Derek was he was no better than one of the average quarterbacks in game one. But again, I go back to that Ram defense in the second half was pretty good. And last week against Denver, he was excellent. And as long as they keep him upright and healthy, and that's true of any other quarterback in the NFL. But I certainly, knowing Mark Davis, by the way, I think I have to tell you, Rich, you have to move on from Al to Mark, okay?
Okay.
Mark would not be opposed to having Kaepernick come into that team if that's what John thinks could improve the football team, and it comes down to that, to tell you the truth. But in terms of that, I have to tell you, I've not had any discussion with anybody, including John Gruden, about the possibility of signing Kaepernick.
Brent Musburger here on the Rich Eisen Show. Are the Rams now the odds-on favorite there in Vegas?
Simply because the Patriots have taken a step back. Obviously, the Patriots were the favorite here, Rich, simply because the feeling among the bookmakers is that the AFC is a little weaker, doesn't have the depth of the NFC. But with the Patriots losing, they weren't ready to push the Jaguars to the top, even though I believe the Jaguars are a legitimate contender, especially if they keep Fournette healthy. I was around him a lot at LSU, and he gets nicked up from time to time. He's awfully good when he's ready to go. But the Rams would be the favorite right now. They'll wait and see what the Vikings are going to come up with the kicking game and their third receiver. They will be up there in the top five. Also, all eyes on Rodgers and the injured knee with the Green Bay Packers. Tonight, of course, a game on the NFL Network, as you know.
Yes, sir.
I honestly think the Cleveland Browns are going to break through and win tonight. I can't believe I'm saying this. But,
Why?
They're favored. They're favored for the first time. And here at the big Super Contest, where those of us who are in it, we pick 5 games a week against the spread over at the Westgate. And if you go in on a Thursday night game, and the Browns are favored for the first time since 2015, I believe it is. They're favored by a field goal. I put them in as one of my entries, so I had to get all 5 of my picks in last night. But I can't remember picking the Browns at all last year, and I think that defense is ready to go. That coordinator is going to be he's going to be so tough for Sam Darnold. I feel for him tonight because there is nobody who likes to blitz more than the Cleveland defensive staff, and they're coming after the youngster tonight. And I do want to applaud Hugh Jackson. I'm not a huge fan of that one-loss record,
yep.
But I happen to agree with keeping Baker Mayfield on the sideline. I know a lot of people are. Listen, if you look around the league at the very creme de la creme, if you look at Brady and you look at Rodgers, neither of them were pushed in and made to play their rookie seasons. I still think, having come off the college beat, I will tell you that this game is so much fiercer, so much tougher than what any of these youngsters face in college. I believe that every rookie quarterback, even if he's the first player selected, should be on that sideline for at least 1 year, watching, observing, and learning. And I just think it's going to be really tough for Darnold tonight against that Browns defense.
Yeah, on a short week, too, against Greg Williams, who, as you pointed out in a very nice way, is all kinds of crazy. And he's interestingly enough, we had Trent Dilfer, Brent, on earlier this week, and he believes that Patrick Mahomes would not have thrown 10 touchdowns over the first 2 weeks for the first quarterback to ever do that in the history of the NFL if he wasn't sitting behind Alex Smith and watching for 15 starts last year.
I totally agree. Totally agree with that.
It's interesting. So I'm mandated to ask, who are your other 4 teams that you think are going to win this week, Brent Musburger?
Well, let me go to the one that might surprise. Listen, there are a few stadiums around the NFL that have a college environment, and that's where the crowds, I think, do help. One of them certainly is up in the Northwest in Seattle. And the Seahawks are lethal at home in the month of September. If you go back and look at the records, they're lethal in their home opener. They're giving only 2 points to the Cowboys. So I'm all in on the Seahawks. Another stadium where I have been, and when Dick Vermeil was a head coach, I went in and watched several times. And the Chiefs crowd will be electric in there. Patrick Mahomes, as you mentioned, off to such a great start, 10 touchdown passes, 2 games, giving 6.5 to San Francisco. I'm all in on that game too, going with the Chiefs. I'm going to go back on the Jaguars. Hate to give 9.5, but in watching the NFL Network, I don't think Mariota is going to be able to go. When I watched him try to throw a couple of passes, he had some clips from practice. I don't think he's anywhere close to 100%. And the Jaguars won't fall asleep earlier like Houston did in Nashville last week. And then I'm going to be a homer. And my 5th team was the Raiders.
Okay.
They're catching 3, full admit it. I have a bias factor, but I think in this one, I'm going to catch the Dolphins peeking ahead. They have to be pretty satisfied about being 2-0, and next week they play the New England Patriots, a divisional game, and more than anything else, the Dolphin fans want to beat the Patriots. I lived in South Florida a long time,
I know,
and I know what that's like. They beat them at home last year. And I think that the Raiders have a chance here to sneak up on them.
Is the first time you covered a game in South Florida, an NFL game in South Florida, the time you heard Namath? You sat with him poolside when he made the guarantee for Super Bowl III, Brent?
It's a very good question.
Thank you.
It could have been the first game, first time I was around, and what memories, Rich? We were in there. The day before or 2 days when that famous picture is taken, if you can imagine journalists being able to walk back to the pool and there's your Super Bowl quarterback and you're back there with an informal conversation with him. I had Joe. Joe lived pretty close to me in the Jupiter, Florida area, and I had him autograph. I think it might be the only time that I've asked an athlete to autograph a picture or anything for me. And he did. He's such a good guy down there. And anytime youngsters or even oldsters come up to him and ask for an autograph, he's so patient, Rich, and such a good guy. But that's a game I'll never forget because I was not a broadcasting. Well, I did work for a radio station along with a newspaper man in Chicago, and I stood next to Howard Cosell on the photo deck. And Howard was a long time. I will tell you, Joe Willie Namath is going to win this young man. The Colts are choking. The Colts are choking. Joe Willie Namath will win. I'll never forget that whole weekend.
He was right, though, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. He was on top of it. And also a lot of made of Namath guaranteeing the win. And back in those days, even though Namath had the highest salary at the time, they weren't independently wealthy, the players. So when a country club, Wednesday or Tuesday, I don't even remember which night it was, invited Joe to come out and receive an honor and give a little talk to the crowd. My wife and I went out because I wasn't making much money, so a free meal is a free meal. And Joe got up and made the guarantee. But today they think it was kind of a brash, boastful way, and it was more a matter-of-fact delivery on the part of Joe that night. I was with Dave Anderson, the great columnist from the New York Times,
yes,
and we both filed stories after that. And he just kind of threw it out. I guarantee we're going to win. I guarantee it. And then he just kept on going with the conversation. And some newspaper men and the wire didn't even pick it up till about 24 hours later. So it now has been built into this big thing about I guarantee it. And it wasn't quite like that. but it was a delight watching what they were able to do. The backfield for Wayview Bank that day. Ordell Bracey was a defensive end for the Colts, and actually they blocked him into retirement after that game. They did a terrific job.
Well, speaking of a delight, this chat is exactly that. Thanks for calling in, Brent. Enjoy the trip back down to South Florida, work the game, and let's chat again real soon.
We will. Thanks, Rich. Have a great weekend.
You bet. That's Brent Musburger, at Brent Musburger on Twitter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.